Have you ever watched someone sipping whiskey and thought that looks really good? But when you finally get to sip your own whiskey, it felt like you were sipping diesel or aviation fuel. Well, you're not alone. I felt the same way, and I know it can be really frustrating. So today I will give you 5 tips that will make it easier to enjoy whiskey. This week I've been to Oslo on a conference, and one night at a pub I was sitting down with a guy who said he didn't like whiskey. I took this as a challenge and I asked him, can I choose one whiskey for you and guide you on how to drink it? And he said sure. So I went to the bar and I bought Glenfiddich 12 years to both of us. And I gave him the tips that I will give you right now. And he said, wow, this is actually good when I'm drinking it this way. Thank you. And the first tip that I gave him, I know it's kind of boring, but we gotta go through it. And that is selecting the right whiskey for you. There's a lot of whiskeys out there. There's a lot of different kinds of whiskeys. There's bourbons, there's Scotch, there's Irish whiskey. There are so many different kinds of whiskey that you just have to find what's the right whiskey for you. For me, it was this one. The Lagavulin, 16 years old. A friend of mine texted me a couple of years ago and said, you gotta try this whiskey, it's awesome. And I was like, yeah, sure, I don't like whiskey, but I'll give it a chance. So I went to the liquor store and I bought the Lagavulin 16 years, and you know the story if you have seen my videos. I opened it in the kitchen and my wife walked in and asked, what's burning? Because it really smells like a bonfire, it's really smoky. So I thought, alright, I like smoky things, so I poured it in the glass and did a couple of other things that you will know later. And I drank it, and wow, the whiskey was so good that I I emptied a bottle in 1 week. For me, it was peated whiskey that got me into whiskey. For you, it may be a Speyside whiskey with cherry cask finished, so it's sweeter and more delightful for you. My point is, find the right whiskey for you. If you're not sure which one to buy and where to look, I will link a video in the end of this video where I talk about my 5 favorite whiskeys for beginners. And then to tip number 2, it's probably as boring but yet as important. It's choosing the right whiskey glass. You may think it doesn't matter, but I made a video with my brother where I tricked him to believe that he was testing 5 different whiskeys. What he was really doing was drinking the same whiskey in 5 different whiskey glasses, or whiskey glasses. It's all the same.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
It's all this. And I drank the same whiskey in the same glasses as him, beside him, and I noticed a huge difference. This one, a Glencairn, it's like a nosing testing glass. It has this bulb shape, so it will concentrate the air when you're sniffing it or nosing it. It will give you a lot of flavors, and also when you're drinking it, it's like giving you a lot of flavors. So if I should recommend anything to a beginner, I would say a rocks glass. You have this glass from Norland. It's a Rauk. It's really good. If I smell this, I'm getting a lot of things. It's sharp. When I'm nosing this, I can't even... It's way too much air coming out of this glass because of the shape is straight and it's larger hole. And also, when I'm drinking this, it was in the test where I was drinking from 5 different glasses. This was the glass that gave me less flavor. So if you're a beginner and you think that whiskey tastes like diesel, this will probably make the alcohol burn a bit milder. For sure, yeah. It's a really, really good glass. The Rauk from Norland. I'll link it down below. And now, there will be tips that will have something to do with how you drink your whiskey. The first one, or tip number 3, drink it like it's hot. Think of it as a very, very, very hot coffee. You don't drink half a cup at once if the coffee is really, really hot. The same goes for whiskey. It's like, think of the alcohol as hot. It's burning. So you will take less amount of beverage in your mouth every time. Actually, there was a guy when I was on a whiskey tasting course that said that every time he was testing out a new whiskey, he was doing it like 3 times. The first times it was like he took such a small amount of whiskey in his mouth that he didn't have to swallow. And the next time he took a little bit more, and the third time he took as much as he thinks was the normal amount for him. So if I will drink this, I will take very, very little. I don't have to swallow. I just almost like dipping your tongue in it. That just gives you the flavors in your mouth. It doesn't give you any burn or anything because there is such a small amount of the whiskey in your mouth that you just feel the flavors. The next time when you're drinking a little bit more, I will give you one bonus tip. Keep your mouth shut. When you're drinking it, when you're drinking it, you take a tiny sip, keep it in your mouth, keep your mouth shut, swallow, and breathe through your nose. Don't breathe through your mouth. Just keep it shut. Because if you pull a lot of air in through your mouth right after you swallow the whiskey, it will burn. Alright? So keep it shut and breathe through your nose. Like this. If you're trying out my tips, please let me know in the comments down below what you think of them. Did it work or didn't it? And I can say right away that some people find tip number 4 a bit gross, but hear me out. This was something that also a guy from a whiskey tasting course was telling. When you're trying whiskey, and if you think it's a bit harsh or burning in your throat, create a bit of spit in your mouth before drinking the whiskey. Don't put water in your whiskey, just create some spit in your mouth before you're taking a sip. And when you take the sip, don't swallow. Mix it with the spit first and then swallow. Nasty? Kinda gross? Try it out. It makes the whiskey rounder in a way. Takes away a bit of the alcohol burning in your throat. It may burn a little bit more in your cheeks, but it's a good way of calming the whiskey. And now the final tip, and this is the tip that helped me the most, and this is probably the tip that most whiskey drinkers will hate. Well, put a large cube of ice in your whiskey. 2 things will happen now. First of all, the whiskey is getting chilled. It's getting colder, and as it's getting colder, it will taste less. The cube will also melt a bit, so you will get some water in your whiskey, and when the amount of ice is melting, the more amount of water is getting in your whiskey, and the less whiskey it will taste. Cheers. The whiskey is getting colder right away, so you don't have to wait for long. If you're waiting too long, it will be very watery and it's not as good in my opinion, but if that's your way of getting into whiskey, you do you. Alright? So the 5 things is, first of all, find your whiskey, then find your whiskey glass, and then you have to sip it like it's hot and maybe create some spit in your mouth to mix the whiskey with before swallowing it and keep your mouth shut. Alright? And if nothing helps, put a big cube of ice in your whiskey, let it cool and let the ice cube melt for a bit, and then drink it and enjoy your whiskey. If you're following these steps, I will almost guarantee that you will be into whiskey within a year. Almost. But please let me know in the comments down below how it went when you tried my tips. And do you have other tips than the ones I mentioned here? Let me also know in the comments down below so I can tell others I meet at bars and pubs and on YouTube. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I wish you the best of luck in your whiskey journey, and until next time, cheers. Ooh, it's cold.